Pharmaceutical Processing, in conjunction with INTERPHEX 2016, presents INTERPHEX Live.
I'm Meg Snyder, editor of the Pharmaceutical Processing magazine. We're here with Russ Soma, the president of Somatech LLC, an affiliated consulting company of IPS, with our INTERPHEX video conference. So Russ, could you tell us a little bit about your company and what it is you do?
Well, Meg, we are a pharmaceutical consulting company, as you had noted. Primarily, we deal with folks that are looking to bring their products to market for the most part. We go in, help them realize the market potential. That's on a big scale what we do. It ranges, but essentially that's the kind of consulting work, formulation, process kind of things that we do. We do some compliance work.
Okay. So Russ, I know you have experience in production support, scale-up, and pilot plant, as well as early and full development activities of pharmaceutical products. What advice would you give to companies looking to implement a QbD strategy?
Meg, I think a lot of times people look at quality by design and they think of the way it was in the truest sense of the word, which was a filing strategy, which encompasses a lot of things. People generally get scared off by that. What I tell people is look into quality by design, look into the precepts of it. And once you start to take it and you drill into the system, you see how things like Q8, Q9, Q10, once you understand these, you can come up with how you want to establish a business strategy, to establish the knowledge of your product, the development of your product, and the final realization of that in market entry. I think what people need to do is not think of quality by design simply as a filing strategy, but more or less what parts of that could help me drive my business more efficiently or more effectively.
Okay. And so, manufacturers often question whether there's a significant payback with QbD. Could you talk a little bit about the economic investments for the setup of QbD? What are some of the steps that are involved?
I think what we hear a lot is because it's an upfront investment, because quality by design really mandates, well, not mandates, but requires that a lot of the work on the compounds and the products are done at very early stages. And I think the statistics on how many products actually make it to market from a new chemical entity are pretty slim. So I think people are a little hesitant to put that much in up front. My suggestion is that in the course of normal development, you're going to do most of what you have to do anyway. I think where people start to get wrapped up in the expenses if they think they have to do a very extensive design of experiment. The other concept is, well, I don't have any folks that can do that. And a lot of times before you employ people like specialists in statistical analysis, what I say just simply is look at it as a way to categorize and catalog the information you have before you start to get into the more exotic multivariate analysis and things like this. I think if you look at it from that standpoint, it becomes a lot more palatable. Otherwise, you're looking at an investment, and I think that's what turns people off. Again, look at the pieces of it and see how you can fit that together without a significant investment.
So, many companies fail to produce a target profile. Could you describe the importance behind creating this document and how it affects QbD?
Well, I think the operative word is target. I mean, bottom line is this is the standard to which everybody has to march. In other words, this is the desired state that the product has to be. Has to be a tablet, has to be has to be dissolution, has to be rapid, has to be high quality, has to be pure, has to be everything that requires patient safety. All these things are taken into effect. Everything that everybody wants the product to be is identified in the target product profile. And as we had spoken, like FDA has an example which runs maybe 15, 20 pages. I've worked with firms where it's 1 page. Bottom line is it's where we want to be. Where is all this going to take us? And the operative word is target. That's where we want to be. That's what we want to launch into the marketplace. So it's a fast forward all the way through market entry to where do we see the uptake in the market and the properties. And the trickle down from this is the quality attributes become things that drive the way the process works, critical process controls. So it's a top down. And I think a lot of people don't spend the time to set it up. It's sort of like going on a road trip, not really knowing where you want to go. I mean, So what? You really need to have a plan, and this kind of drives it. It's from top down. So that's the critic, and that's really what a TPP is all about.
And so what are some of the internal partnerships that are essential for a successful QbD implementation? And how can or should a company approach these partnerships?
Again, the internal part to quality by design is, in fact, the way most companies establish product development teams. Larger firms call them project teams, smaller firms may call them development teams. I don't know. It depends on the terminology. In a sense, what it is you look across what you need to know to make a submission. You need to file it, so you need the regulatory piece. You need to put all of the technical information into it, so you need a CMC part that goes into the NDA, so you need these people. You need the technical development team. You need the physical, we'll call it the manufacturing, the physical plant. You need to have the people from that do the pharmacokinetics. So essentially, everybody that holds or adds a piece to the story has to be on that team. And when this is taken to an external partner, customarily a team that reflects your team is usually expected, but that doesn't always happen. But essentially, I think you have to have that built in. What I'm saying is don't expect the CMO to come in and say, okay, I got these 7 people. But 2 people that are key to drive all of the pieces. And the recommendation is that to make sure that that person is part of your team as well. Okay? And regular communication is key, making sure we all know where it's going. Okay?
So what are some of the high-risk areas in terms of inability to leverage QbD as a business strategy?
I would say the risk, there's no risk to doing quality, but the risk to not doing it correctly, I think, is not establishing the database or the knowledge store early on, not understanding the physical properties, the physical chemical properties of an API, not having a clear understanding of what the market's going to be. Meg, I can't tell you how many times people develop a product and they make it such that the pilot size batch is what they intend to go to market with. And within 6 months, they're scrambling to do a scale up. So the point is, have a realistic approach. Have a realistic approach to what the market uptake is going to be. Have a realistic approach to that. The risk being that all of the upfront work you had done is not going to come to bear, and you're not going to make market entry as soon as possible. The other risk is it requires that you finish everything you're going to do before you make the filing. Logic would dictate the product is validated. Most companies don't want to make that sort of investment. They feel that's too much of a risk because these are batches then that become non-usable. These are the sorts of things. You can't overdo the stability. Again, an expensive proposition, but key stability studies at key nodes in the process are absolutely imperative. I guess the risks are not so much that you don't do it, is that you don't make the investment in time and effort, and I think that's a lot of the problems what people see as a downside. So the risks are, if you want to shy away from some of the investment, that's probably one of the risks.
So how can companies get to a place where QbD is a business driver?
I think most companies have to step back and say, how do we do things? And 90% of the time, you're not doing quality by accident. You're doing quality by design anyway. I think what you need to do is step back and say, what sort of systems do I need to categorize this information such that it is available for me to use and leverage for a filing, so that once I make my filing, I can use this to defend the product. The strategy is, hey, look at what you're doing first. Maybe it doesn't require a whole lot of reorganization. The other thing is to take the knowledge of how you do things and make this as communicate this to the organization. Most companies do this by establishing a manual, not an SOP, but a manual that tells everyone, okay, if you're going to take a product to market entry and it's this kind of product, these are generally the approaches you have. This way, again, everybody marches to the same tune. It gets right back to our original discussion on the target product profile. It just disseminates a common knowledge and a common approach.
So for these, manuals that you're talking about, how frequently are they updated or accessed by employees?
Well, manuals are updated, depends on the nature of the chapters or the nature of the sections, but they're usually looked at in a review on a yearly basis. And each chapter is usually owned by an internal expert. And it's well worth the investment. It's extremely painful to put it together the first time, but once you got it, it's very, very useful.
It's probably revising at that point.
Yeah, and again, the revisions are always understanding that in addition to your job is also to revise as part of the chapter. So that's always something people don't look at in anticipation and joy, but that's part of your job. But that's what a lot of companies do. So in other words, if there's a chapter on scale up, there'll be one expert on that, and what that does, Meg, is that allows people to take their knowledge and institutionalize it so that it's written down to share with everybody else, so that when somebody that has a significant tenure with the company has had that experience, by reducing that down to by codifying it, you captured it. Okay.
Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you at the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Pharmaceutical Processing, in conjunction with INTERPHEX 2016, presents INTERPHEX Live.